Have you ever noticed how your dreams die quietly? Not with a loud failure, not with a dramatic collapse, but with a whisper, a gentle voice that says, "Not today. Tomorrow will be better." This is how it begins, not with laziness, but with mercy, a soft lie designed to protect your sense of self. You don't delay because you don't care. You delay because you care so deeply, it hurts to even try. You'd rather cradle the idea of who you could be than risk proving it false. You don't fear the task. You fear the truth it might reveal, that the image in your mind, the genius, the creator, the destined one, might not survive contact with reality. So you wait, you make a list, you tidy your desk, you light the candle. You tell yourself that it's preparation, not fear. That hesitation is wisdom, but behind every excuse is a quiet funeral, a part of you that could have lived if only you had begun. And while you wait for the perfect moment, time is not waiting with you. It is walking away, dragging behind it all the versions of you that could have existed had you answered the whisper with movement. Why do we worship preparation but fear execution? Why do we spend hours arranging the battlefield but never step into the fight? You think you're getting ready, that if you just adjust one more detail, wait for a better mood, listen to one more podcast, clean your room one more time, you'll finally be ready. But this isn't preparation. It's delay in disguise. This is the purgatory of intention, a space where effort feels real, but nothing is actually risked, where the soul stays clean because the hands never touch the work. You think it's harmless, this waiting, but it's not. It is the slow erosion of your will. Every day you delay, you reinforce the lie that you cannot begin without perfect conditions. But conditions are never perfect. Clarity does not come before action. It follows it. And while you obsess over the mood, the lighting, the ritual, time slips by unnoticed, until one day you wake up and realize your entire life has been a rehearsal. The stage was always there. You just never walked onto it. Why does a simple task feel so heavy? Why does starting one small thing feel like standing on the edge of something vast and dangerous? Because the task isn't just a task. It's a mirror. And when you approach it, it doesn't just reflect the work. It reflects you, your fears, your self-doubt, the fragile image you've built of who you are and who you pretend to be. Every unfinished idea you carry in your mind is pristine, untouched, safe. But the moment you try to bring it into the world, it risks becoming something less, something flawed, something real. And this is where the inner critic awakens, not as a voice of reason, but as a saboteur. It whispers that if you try and fail, the world will see what you already fear, that you're not good enough, not talented enough, not ready. So it tells you to wait, to perfect the idea a little longer, to delay, not out of laziness, but out of high standards. But perfectionism is not a virtue. It is fear in a tailored suit. It is not the pursuit of excellence, but the refusal to be seen in your becoming. And so the task remains untouched, not because you're incapable, but because you cannot bear to see your reflection if the illusion shatters. How many times have you called it patience when it was really fear? How often do you wait for a sign, a shift, a mood, as if the universe will personally grant you permission to begin? This is the brilliance of hesitation. It feels like intelligence. You tell yourself you're waiting for clarity, for alignment, for the right conditions. But what you're really doing is protecting yourself. Because as long as you haven't begun, you haven't failed. As long as it's still in your mind, it's still perfect. So you wait, not because it's wise, but because it's safe. Nietzsche warned of this paralysis. He called it the sickness of thinkers who cannot act, who lose themselves in eternal becoming, in endless rehearsal. And while they wait for inspiration to descend like a god, they quietly bury their will to power beneath layers of overthinking. They become architects of castles that never touch the ground. The myth of divine inspiration is comforting. It tells you that once you're truly ready, the work will pour out of you, clean and complete. But that moment never comes, because inspiration isn't divine. It's earned. It's summoned by the discipline of showing up, not once but every day, even when nothing feels right, especially when nothing feels right. Because hesitation isn't wisdom, it's just fear dressed in sacred robes. Have you ever felt grief for a version of yourself that never lived? Not because they died, but because you never let them be born. Every time you delay, a possibility dies, quietly, without ceremony. Each postponed effort is a tiny funeral held in silence. You bury the book you never wrote, the path you never walked, the voice you never let speak. And over time, this becomes more than procrastination. It becomes identity. You are no longer someone who is preparing. You are someone who never began. Carl Jung called this the unlived life, the self that stays dormant beneath the mask you present to the world. He warned that as long as we live inside the persona, the socially approved mask, we will never meet the true self, the one hidden in shadow, waiting not for perfection, but for courage. But courage is terrifying, because stepping into the unknown threatens everything you've used to define yourself. Your roles, your excuses, your illusions of safety. And so, you delay, not out of comfort, but out of fear. Because beginning means becoming, and becoming means losing control. It means letting go of who you've been for the chance to become who you were meant to be. But every time you postpone that leap, your potential doesn't disappear. It decays, and with it, a part of you quietly begins to mourn. What if your biggest enemy isn't the world or the task, but your own protection mechanisms? What if procrastination isn't a time problem, but a spiritual one? Every time you delay your potential, you think you're avoiding discomfort. But what you're really doing is protecting the ego. Because the ego, your constructed sense of self, feeds on illusion. And nothing threatens illusion more than action. Because action exposes you. It shows you who you really are, not who you fantasize about becoming. And that is the danger the ego cannot survive. So it creates a defense, inaction, because as long as you don't try, the fantasy remains intact. The book in your mind is still a masterpiece. The dream is still pure, and you are still special, still chosen, still gifted, at least in theory. Trying would mean testing that theory, and failure would mean rewriting your entire self-concept. So instead, you betray your own becoming. Slowly, elegantly, you avoid the one thing that could reveal your truth and set you free. This is the quiet violence of procrastination. It masquerades as care, but it's sabotage. It tells you, not yet, when what it means is never. Because the moment you act, the moment you begin, you threaten the ego's entire infrastructure. And so it whispers, it distracts, it delays, anything to keep the mirror from shattering. Because a shattered illusion is painful, but an unlived life is fatal. Who told you that you have to feel ready before you begin? Who convinced you that clarity comes first, that confidence is a prerequisite? Readiness is a myth, a modern addiction. We wait for motivation like it's a divine spark, as if the universe will hand us certainty wrapped in a moment of perfect alignment. But the truth is this: the moment never comes. Readiness is not the doorway, it's the result. Clarity is not something you feel before the leap. It's something you discover in the fall. Every masterpiece you admire began in uncertainty. Every thinker you quote, every artist you worship. They didn't begin with confidence. They began with trembling hands and voices full of doubt. They didn't wait to feel like gods. They showed up as mortals and built divinity in the doing. Carl Jung wrote that the shadow only becomes visible when faced. In other words, transformation only begins in motion, not before, not in thought, in action. You want to be certain. You want to be validated in advance. But life doesn't work that way. Life meets you in movement. The muse doesn't visit the idol. She appears when your fingers are dirty, your ego is cracked, and you've already begun. Not perfectly, not powerfully, but honestly. And that's all that was ever required. What if the thing you're waiting for is waiting for you? What if the door you're afraid to open isn't locked? It's just waiting for you to touch it. Beginning is not a reward. It's not something granted after enough preparation or prayer. It's a rebellion, a quiet war against the voice that says you are not enough. Because when you begin, truly begin, you are not just doing a task. You are confronting your fear. You are turning the mirror around and saying, I am ready to be seen, not as perfect, but as becoming. You will not begin flawlessly. You will begin afraid. You will begin uncertain. You will begin doubting every step. And that is exactly how it's supposed to feel. Because transformation doesn't come with applause. It comes with resistance and silence and the trembling echo of your first step into the unknown. But that first step, that's everything. Because the self is not found in thought. It is forged in movement. It's built in the doing, in the reaching, in the trying. So don't wait for readiness. Don't wait for confidence. Don't wait for anything. Begin. Begin again. Begin afraid. Begin uncertain. But begin. And remember, the next video picks up where we left off here. Awakening builds upon each video. See you in the next one.